Denise Marlowe had 24 hours left before a demolition crew cut through a steel member hidden inside the east wall of the Sentinel Building. The engineer on the project had told her the beam could not be touched until someone explained why it was there. The filed drawings did not show it. The renovation schedule did not allow for it. And the company's 50th anniversary event was less than 2 weeks away. Then Priya Anand placed an old permit copy on Denise's desk. At the bottom was one name, Walter Kessler. Denise looked at it once, then again. "Walter Kessler?" she said. Priya did not answer immediately. "The original architect of record," she said at last. "And the man you fired last Thursday." Denise felt the office become too small. Walter had not argued when she let him go. He had not told her who he was. He had set down his mop, looked once at the lobby ceiling, and walked out through the doors of the building he had designed. Now Priya was telling her that without him, no one should touch the east corner. 24 hours earlier, Denise would have called that a scheduling problem. Now it was a question of whether she had already made the worst decision of her career. 5 days before that, Walter Kessler had arrived at the Sentinel at 5:15 in the morning. He was 79 years old. He entered through the loading dock, carried a metal thermos in one hand and a ring of old keys in the other, and began the same route he had followed for 19 years. Boiler room, parking structure, freight elevator, lobby lights, restrooms on the 3rd and 7th floors, mechanical closet behind reception. To most tenants, Walter was the quiet janitor with the gray hair, the mop cart, and the habit of appearing before a problem became visible. By 7, he was on his knees beside an electrical panel behind the front desk, listening to a low, uneven hum. The night staff had not heard it. The day staff had not arrived. Walter heard it because he had been listening to the building for nearly 2 decades. He opened the panel, traced the sound to a loose breaker connection, and called the chief engineer before the first tenant entered the lobby. It was fixed before 9. No one thanked him. The tenant walkthrough on Monday would have bright lights. The elevator would work. The lobby would look as if nothing had ever been wrong. That was how Walter preferred most things. At 9:20, Denise Marlowe asked him to step into the lobby conference area. She held a clipboard in one hand and a paper coffee cup in the other. She was 39, sharply dressed, efficient, and exhausted in the disciplined way of someone who had spent years learning how not to show it. "We're restructuring the maintenance team," she said. "Effective today." Walter rested both hands on the mop handle. "I've been here 19 years. I know, and I appreciate that." Denise glanced at the clipboard, then back at him. "But we are preparing for the anniversary event. We need the building to feel current. Fresh energy, you understand." Behind her, morning light moved across the Sentinel stone facade and through the front glass. Walter looked past Denise for one quiet second. The facade had been his idea. So had the lobby ceiling above her. So had the narrow line of bronze around the entrance that everyone walked over without noticing. He said, "When do I receive my final pay paperwork?" Denise blinked. "Human Resources will send it today." Walter nodded once. He placed the mop in the supply closet. He took off the building badge he had worn for 19 years and set it on the counter. Then he walked out. Marcus Bell, one of the building's younger security guards, watched the whole thing from the reception desk. So did Priya Anand, an architect from the outside firm managing the atrium renovation. Neither of them knew what Walter had once been. Priya only noticed that Walter did not look angry. He looked toward the ceiling as if he was checking whether something above them was still level. Denise had been at Sentinel for 4 months. Meridian had moved her from one operations post to another with increasing speed, always after a disappointing quarter or a difficult client meeting. She had learned to answer messages before they became problems. She had learned to prepare the list before headquarters asked for it. She had learned that people above her called it efficiency when someone below her lost a job. Grant had not told her to fire Walter by name. He had told her that the anniversary photographs needed to show a building moving forward. He had asked whether the staff at the entrance reflected the image Meridian wanted to sell. Denise had looked at a roster, seen Walter's age, and made the rest of the decision herself. That was why Marcus's objection bothered her later. He found her in the loading dock office after Walter left. "You know he trained me," Marcus said. "When the alarm system failed my first week, he stayed on the phone with me at 2 in the morning. He did not have to." Denise kept her eyes on the spreadsheet. "The decision is final." Marcus did not raise his voice. "Then you should at least know you fired the person who fixes things before the rest of us notice they are broken." Denise said nothing. At the time, she thought he was defending a coworker. She did not yet understand he was describing the building itself. That evening, Walter drove 20 minutes across town to the care facility where his wife lived. Eleanor had been diagnosed with dementia 6 years earlier. In the beginning, she forgot appointments, then birthdays, then streets she had driven for 30 years. By the time Walter took the maintenance job at the Sentinel, her care had become a matter of schedules, medication, transportation, and bills that arrived every month whether a family was ready for them or not. Walter's pension covered part of the cost. His maintenance salary covered the rest. He sat beside her in the courtyard after dinner. Eleanor turned a smooth gray stone over in her hand. She had carried one like it for years. Walter did not know where the habit began. It seemed to settle her. For several minutes she watched the small fountain at the center of the courtyard. Then she looked at him. "You built something," she said. Walter waited. "A long time ago." "I did." She studied his face as if the answer had brought another memory close enough to touch but not close enough to hold. "Were you proud of it?" "Yes," Walter said. "I was." She smiled, almost apologetically. "I can't remember what it was." "That's all right." He covered her hand with his. "I remember enough for both of us." She laughed softly, though he was not sure she understood why. He stayed until the visiting hour ended. Then he drove home to a quiet apartment, set his thermos beside the sink, and woke at 5:15 the next morning with nowhere to go. For the first 3 days after the firing, he still sat at the kitchen table before sunrise. Habit was stronger than usefulness. On the second day, he called the state unemployment office. He waded through a recording, entered a number, waded through another recording, and finally reached a message telling him to call again during normal business hours. On the third day, he opened a small notebook and wrote down what he knew: pension deposit, rent, utilities, insurance, Eleanor's monthly care balance. He did the arithmetic twice. Then he turned the notebook over so he would not keep looking at it. The following afternoon, the care facility billing office called. Walter answered on the third ring. The woman on the line was kind. She spoke with the careful tone of someone who had delivered difficult reminders many times. A payment had not cleared. The balance could wait 2 weeks. After that, the facility would need to discuss a formal payment plan. Walter thanked her. He asked no one to bend the rules. He did not explain that he had been fired because a photograph might look better without him in it. When the call ended, he stood at the closet in his hallway and took down an old leather drafting case. It had not been opened in more than a decade. The brass clasp was dull. The corners were cracked. Inside were pencils, a slide rule, a steel ruler, and rolls of tracing paper that smelled faintly of dust and old paper. Walter placed the case on the kitchen table. Then he made coffee. Across town, the Sentinel Building was changing faster than anyone inside it understood. The atrium renovation had begun 3 months earlier. The owners wanted new glass, brighter finishes, a larger event space, and a press-ready lobby for the anniversary celebration. Priya's firm had designed the expansion. A structural engineer named Dishan Okafor was reviewing the support work. Demolition had reached the service corridor behind the east wall. At 10:30 on Wednesday morning, the demolition foreman called Priya over. "You need to see this," Behind a section of drywall was an angled steel member that did not match the drawings. The filed plan showed standard beam spacing. The actual building contained an extra reinforcement plate welded into the frame and tied toward the east corner. Deshawn stood in front of it without speaking. The foreman checked his schedule. "We cut into this bay Friday morning," he said. "That's where the new support column goes." Deshawn shook his head. "Not until we understand why this is here." "Can't you tell from the old plans?" "No." Priya looked at the beam. It was not a random repair. The placement was deliberate. "What happens if we cut it?" she asked. Deshawn kept his voice level. "I do not know, and that is exactly why we do not cut it." He explained only what mattered. The east corner carried load in a way the filed drawings did not fully explain. If that extra steel had been added to compensate for something below or behind the wall, removing or weakening it without a new load path could create a serious safety problem. Not a cosmetic delay, not a missed deadline, a building problem. Priya called Denise immediately. "Give us 48 hours, she said. "We need to pause the cut and trace the original condition." Denise was standing in the renovated lobby with Grant Holloway on speakerphone. Grant was Meridian Facilities Group's regional vice president. He had flown in twice already to review the anniversary plans. He did not like surprises. He liked schedules, press coverage, and phrases such as brand position. "The ribbon cutting is in 11 days, he said when Denise relayed Priya's request. "We cannot stop every time a contractor finds something old inside an old building." "It is not a contractor issue," Denise said. "The engineer wants a review." Grant paused. "Give them a day." Priya had asked for 48 hours. Denise gave her 24. Priya did not accept the answer as easily as Denise expected. "24 hours is not a review," she said. "It is a countdown." Denise looked toward Grant's name glowing on the phone display. "I have given you the time I can give." "Then I need one thing in writing," Priya said. "No cut happens without Deshawn's approval." Grant spoke before Denise could respond. "Put that in writing, but solve it." The call ended. Denise stood in the lobby under the ceiling Walter had designed, and watched workers polish new glass panels for an event that now seemed to depend on something no one could explain. She told herself that Priya would find an answer. She did not ask what happened if she did not. That afternoon, Priya went to the city archives. She pulled boxes of old permits, inspection records, elevator certifications, construction photographs, and ownership filings. Most of it was routine. The Sentinel had been built in 1974. Records had been moved twice, copied badly once, and stored by people who could not have known that a missing page might matter 50 years later. Near the end of the day, Priya found the original permit set. At the bottom of the structural filing was a signature. Walter T. Kessler, Kessler and Voss Architecture. She called the state licensing database. No current license. She searched the old firm. It had dissolved decades earlier. She called 2 retired city inspectors whose names appeared in the records. Neither remembered the project clearly enough to help. At the archive desk, Priya said the name aloud one more time. Walter Kessler. Marcus Bell had come to drop off a delivery badge for a contractor. He heard her. "Kessler?" he said. "Walter Kessler?" Priya turned. "You know him. He used to work at Sentinel, maintenance. Denise fired him last week." Priya looked back at the permit page, then at Marcus. "Do you have his number?" Priya did not call Walter first. She called Denise. Denise answered from the lobby, where workers were still setting polished panels into the atrium frame. "I found a name on the original structural permit," Priya said. Denise waited. Walter T. Kessler. Kessler and Voss Architecture. For a second, Denise did not understand. Then she did. "Walter?" she said. "Our Walter? The man you fired last week?" Priya said. Yes, the original architect of record. Denise looked up at the lobby ceiling. The bronze line around the entrance. The stone facade beyond the glass. All of it had been designed by the quiet man she had dismissed for looking too old for an anniversary photograph. Are you sure? Denise asked. The permit is signed. I still need him to explain the reinforcement. But yes, I am sure enough to say no one touches that beam until we reach him. Grant was no longer on the line. Denise could have said the same thing she had said to Marcus. The decision is made. Instead, she looked at the crew working beneath the ceiling Walter had designed. Find him, she said. Priya looked at the permit page. I already am. Walter was sitting beside Eleanor when Priya called. The television was on low. Eleanor had fallen asleep in her chair, her hand resting beneath his. He stepped into the hallway before he answered. This is Walter. Mr. Kessler, my name is Priya Anand. I'm an architect working on the Sentinel renovation. I found your name on the original structural permit. Walter did not respond at first. Priya continued. We found a steel reinforcement behind the east lobby wall. It is not on the filed drawings. The crew is scheduled to cut in that area tomorrow morning. Our engineer has stopped the work, but we need to know why it exists. Walter closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw the Sentinel construction site in 1974. He was 28 then. His hair was darker. His knees did not complain on stairs. He had believed a good drawing could prevent most bad outcomes if enough people followed it. 3 days after excavation began, a soil report arrived late. The east corner sat over a pocket of unstable fill. The contractor wanted to keep moving. The owner wanted the building open before winter. Walter's business partner wanted no permit amendment that might delay the project and threaten the firm's fee. Walter had brought in a structural consultant. Together, they developed a field solution. Reinforce the East Bay, redirect the load, document the change, file the amendment. The reinforcement had been installed. The amendment had not. Walter had kept the field notes, the photographs, and the calculations in his own project archive because he did not trust anyone else to keep them. He had not spoken about the Sentinel for 50 years. Now Priya was asking if he remembered. I remember, Walter said. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Can you help us? Walter looked through the open doorway at Eleanor asleep in her chair. Bring the current drawings to the care facility, he said. And do not let anyone cut that beam. Priya arrived 40 minutes later with Deshawn, a laptop, printed plans, and the expression of someone trying not to show how close the deadline had become. They used a small visiting room at the end of the hallway. Walter opened his drafting case on the table. Deshawn spread out the current structural drawings. Priya set photographs of the exposed steel beside them. For several minutes, Walter said nothing. He studied the old beam layout. He studied the proposed new support column. Then he took a pencil from the drafting case and drew one short line on the printout. Your column cannot go there, he said. Deshawn leaned closer. Why? Walter tapped the East Bay. Because the original foundation below that corner was not carrying the load the report said it would carry. The steel you found is part of a correction. It pulls force away from the weak section. He turned the page and drew another line. If you cut through it or set your new column 2 feet east, you will push load back toward the same problem. Deshawn looked from the pencil marks to the photographs. Do you have the original field notes? Walter opened the leather case wider. Beneath the old tools was a thin brown folder. I kept them. The notes were not a current engineering certification. Walter made that clear before anyone could misunderstand. My license is gone, he said. I cannot approve your design. I can tell you what was found, what we did and why. Deshawn nodded. That is enough for me to build a proper review. Priya looked at Walter. If we stop the cut, the anniversary may move. Walter looked back at the plans. If you do not stop the cut, you may have a bigger problem than moving an anniversary. That was the first decision he made for the building in 50 years. Not because anyone had asked him to return. Because people could be standing beneath that atrium in 11 days. Before Priya left, Walter asked her one question. Does Denise know? She knows the permit bears your name, Priya said. She knows enough to stop the cut. Walter nodded. He did not ask Priya to tell her. He did not ask for his job back. He only folded the copied drawings, placed them inside the brown folder and said, "Bring Deshawn to the east wall at 7. I want to see the original plate before anyone covers it again." Priya looked at him. "You are coming back?" "I am coming back to look at a problem," Walter said. "Do not make it more than that." But after Priya left, Walter sat at the kitchen table longer than usual. For 50 years, he had carried the Sentinel as a private fact. He had never lied when someone asked what he did. Almost no one asked what he had done before. The maintenance job had been steady. It had allowed him to take Eleanor to appointments and leave early when care staff called. It had allowed him to be near one building he knew from the ground up. There was comfort in being useful without being seen. There was also a cost. Walter understood that more clearly now. Priya called Denise from the visiting room. Deshawn spoke first. "We have a credible historical explanation for the reinforcement. We need to hold the East Bay, complete a field verification, and redesign the new support location." Denise listened at her desk while Grant waited on the line. "How long?" Grant asked. "Best case, 48 hours for review and another 3 days for the revised work," Deshawn said. "I will not give a final duration until I see the foundation exposure." Grant's voice hardened. "Can you keep the ceremony?" Deshawn did not answer immediately. "I can keep people safe," he said. "That is the answer I can give you right now." Denise looked through the office window at the lobby workers installing new glass panels. Then she looked at the old permit copy Priya had sent. Walter T. Kessler. She had seen the name every morning for 19 years on a maintenance roster. She had not once wondered whether it belonged to a man with a life beyond the uniform she had decided no longer photographed well. "Hold the cut," Denise said. Grant turned toward her through the speakerphone. "Denise, we hold the cut," she repeated, "until Deshawn signs off." That was not an apology, not yet, but it was the first time she chose the building over the schedule. The next morning, Deshawn returned to Denise's office with the copied field notes, the original permit, and a clear explanation of what the project team now knew. "The reinforcement is real," he said. "The foundation condition is real. Walter's historical documentation matches what we opened in the wall." Denise looked at the pages again. The permit signature no longer felt like a coincidence or a strange rumor. It was a fact sitting on her desk. "My firm will complete the structural review," Deshawn said. "I will sign the revised design. Walter is providing the history and the original site information. That is the proper arrangement." "Will it hold?" Denise asked. "After the redesign and inspection, yes. And before that?" Deshawn looked toward the atrium. "Before that, it was a question I would not have wanted answered by a crowd." He placed one more document in front of her. Walter's personnel file. Priya had asked Human Resources for it after leaving the care facility. 19 years, no disciplinary actions. 3 tenant commendations. A maintenance log so detailed that the chief engineer had used portions of it to train new employees. Denise read one entry about a drainage issue in the east stairwell, another about a boiler vibration that only occurred during certain weather, a third about the lobby electrical panel Walter had repaired the morning she fired him. She had cut a person from a list without reading the line beneath his name. After Deshawn left, Denise called Grant from the office doorway. "You knew we were taking on a 50-year-old building," she said. "Why was there no full archival review before demolition?" Grant's answer came too quickly. The plans were approved. The plans were incomplete. Then we correct the record and move on. Denise looked at Walter's personnel file on her desk. He was fired because I treated his age like a problem. Grant did not answer for several seconds. Do not turn this into a confession, he said. Turn it into a resolution. Denise lowered the phone. For months that would have sounded like good advice. Now it sounded like another way of asking her to hide from the thing she had done. I will resolve it, she said. But I am not hiding it from him. She ended the call. By noon, the east wall was opened further. Deshawn's team exposed the foundation area behind the reinforcement. The original condition matched Walter's notes. The weak fill had not disappeared. It had simply been held in check by the solution Walter and the consultant had built around it. The proposed new column location would have complicated that solution. Deshawn outlined the revised plan. The existing reinforcement would remain untouched. The new column would move. A secondary support plate would be added. The work would require additional steel, an updated inspection, and 2 days of overtime. Grant called Denise again. I am hearing overtime, a revised permit, and a delayed media setup, he said. Tell me what you need. Denise could hear the calculation in his voice. Cost, exposure, liability, press. She looked through the glass wall toward the atrium. What I need is for nobody to tell the crew to rush a safety decision, she said. That was not what I asked. It is what you need to hear. Grant was silent. Denise continued. If the final inspection says the event moves, it moves. I am not putting a crowd under a ceiling because we are afraid of a bad headline. For the first time since she had come to Sentinel, she did not sound like someone trying to stay off the next list. Grant exhaled slowly. Keep me updated, he said. Walter returned to the Sentinel the next day. Priya arranged a consulting agreement through Meridian. It paid him for his time, covered the work he was doing, and made clear that Deshawn's licensed firm would take responsibility for the present-day engineering and filings. Walter did not arrive in a suit. He wore a clean work shirt, dark trousers, and the same old coat he had worn to the care facility for years. Someone handed him a hard hat. He stood behind the opened east wall, looking at steel he had last seen when he was 28 years old. The foreman pointed toward the new column location. We can land it here, he said. Walter measured the distance with his eyes. Then he shook his head. Not there. Deshawn checked the revised drawing. That is where the first layout put it. It is close, Walter said. Close is not the same as right. He stepped forward, pointed to a spot several feet away, and explained the original load path in language the crew could use. Put it there. Keep the existing reinforcement free. Do not ask this corner to carry the same weight twice. The foreman marked the floor. Deshawn ran through the numbers again. Then he smiled. That works. Walter looked at the crew. You can do this properly, he said. Or you can do it twice. But if you do it twice, the first time will cost more. The crew understood that sentence. At 7 the next morning, Walter stood with the crew before the first torch came out. The foreman pointed to the old reinforcement. We can work around it, he said, but it will be slower. Walter looked at the young welders, the laborers, the electrician waiting near the temporary panel. None of them had been alive when the Sentinel was built. None of them had made the original mistake. None of them should be asked to carry the risk of correcting it in a hurry. Slow is cheaper than wrong, Walter said. The foreman gave a short nod. Then Walter turned to Denise, who had arrived without speaking. You want the building to look new? He asked. Denise met his eyes. Yes. Then do not make it pretend it has no history. She held his gaze. No, she said. I will not. Work began before noon. The next 2 days were not easy. The steel arrived late. A storm delayed one delivery. The city inspector asked for additional documentation because the historical condition had never been formally included in the public file. Priya brought the archived permit materials. Deshawn prepared the current engineering narrative. Walter provided the field photographs and notes from 1974. The The city accepted the revised record as part of the present renovation review. Walter's name appeared where it belonged, not as a current signer, not as a shortcut around the rules, as the original architect who had identified the old condition and preserved the information that made a safe solution possible. During the work, Denise walked through the corridor twice a day. The first time, she kept her distance. The second time, Walter was standing near the east wall with Priya and Deshawn. His hand rested on the back of a plastic chair. He looked tired. Denise stopped a few feet away. "Mr. Kessler," Walter turned. She had rehearsed a speech in the elevator. It disappeared when she saw him. "I should have read your file," she said. Walter waited. "I should have asked you who you were before I decided you no longer belonged here." "You should have," he said. There was no anger in his voice. That made it harder. Denise nodded. "I am sorry." Walter looked toward the work crew. "Are they following Deshawn's plan?" "Yes." "Then that is the important part today." He returned to the drawing. Denise stood there for a moment longer. Then she left. The final inspection happened 2 days before the ceremony. Deshawn walked the East Bay with the city inspector, the foreman, and Priya. They checked the new support, the retained reinforcement, the revised load route, and the work around the atrium. At the end, the inspector signed the report. The event could proceed. No one in the lobby would know how close a bad decision had come to becoming a dangerous one. Most people never do. That afternoon, Denise called Walter and asked if she could meet him after visiting hours at Eleanor's facility. Walter said yes. She found him in the parking lot at dusk. He was walking slowly toward his car. The day had been long. The collar of his shirt was open. He held the smooth gray stone Eleanor had left in his pocket by mistake. Denise stopped a few feet away. "Mr. Kessler." He turned. "I owe you a fuller apology," she said. Walter said nothing. "I fired you because I looked at your age and decided it meant you were part of a past I wanted hidden from a camera. I did not review your record. I did not ask what you knew. I did not ask why the building's chief engineer trusted you. I made a decision about your value before I had enough information to make any decision at all." She took a breath. "Grant pressured me. That is true, but it is not an excuse. I could have pushed back. I chose not to." Walter held the stone in his hand. "I appreciate you saying it clearly," he said. "Most apologies try to leave the speaker looking clean." Denise accepted that. "Human Resources has reversed the termination," she said. "They are offering your lost wages, a separation settlement, and the consulting fee. You should speak with someone before you sign anything. We will also correct the historical filing. Your name will be added to the building record as architect of record for Kessler and Voss." Walter looked at her. "You do not need to offer me my old job back." Denise had not expected that. "I was going to," she admitted. "I do not want it back." "Then what do you want?" Walter looked past the parking lot toward the dark outline of the care facility. "My wife's bills need to be paid. The settlement will help with that. But I do not want a plaque by the elevators. I do not want a photograph in a newsletter." Denise nodded slowly. "I want the public building record corrected," Walter said. "Not because I need strangers to clap for me. Because the truth should be where the next engineer can find it." "It will be," Denise said. Walter opened his car door. Then he paused. "There is one more thing." Denise waited. "Read the file before you write the list next time." She did not answer immediately. "I will," she said. The settlement paperwork arrived 3 days later. Walter did what Denise had told him to do. He spoke with a worker advocate at a local senior legal clinic before signing anything. He made sure the agreement included the lost wages, the consulting fee, and the correction to the building's historical record. The amount did not change his life into a different kind of life. It gave him room. It cleared the unpaid care balance. It covered several months ahead. It meant that when the billing office called again, Walter would not have to ask for 2 more weeks. He sat at his kitchen table after making the payment. The old drafting kit was still there. He opened it. At the bottom of the case, under the slide rule and old pencils, was a photograph of the Sentinel under construction. Steel frame against a gray sky. Walter standing near the east corner in a hard hat, 28 years old, holding a rolled drawing under one arm. He looked at the photograph for a while. Then he put it back. The rededication ceremony happened on schedule. The lobby atrium was brighter than Walter remembered it. New glass carried daylight down through a ceiling that had finally been built in a way close to what he had first drawn 50 years earlier. Tenants gathered with coffee cups. City staff stood near the ribbon. Grant Holloway shook hands near the front and spoke about preservation as if he had always believed in it. Walter stood near the back in a plain dark coat. He did not come for the cameras. He came because Priya had asked. The deputy commissioner read a brief history of the building. The Sentinel Building was designed in 1974 by Kessler and Voss Architecture, she said. Its original architect of record, Walter Kessler, provided critical historical documentation during the recent renovation, helping the project team preserve the building's structural safety. A few people turned. Marcus saw Walter first. He smiled and stepped beside him without making a scene. Priya stood near the front with Deshawn. She gave Walter a small nod. Denise came over after the statement ended. They corrected the filing this morning, she said. I checked the record myself. Walter looked up at the new atrium glass. Good. A reporter approached with a microphone. Mr. Kessler, how does it feel to finally receive credit for designing this building? Walter looked at the ceiling, then at the people standing beneath it. It feels better that it is safe, he said. The reporter waited. Walter did not give her anything else. Denise smiled slightly. You are not going to make this easy for the communications team. They will survive. For the first time, she laughed. Then Walter looked at his watch. I have somewhere to be. He left before the ribbon was cut. At the care facility, Eleanor was sitting in the courtyard with the smooth gray stone in her hand. When Walter sat down beside her, she looked at him with the same mild surprise she showed every evening, as if he had only stepped away for a moment and returned at exactly the right time. There you are, she said. There I am. She held out the stone. Walter took it from her and placed it on the arm of the chair. Did you build something today? She asked. He looked toward the fountain. The question caught him off guard. A long time ago, he said. I helped make sure it was still standing. Eleanor considered that. Did it turn out all right? Walter looked down at her hand. Then he took it. Yes, he said. It did. They sat there until the courtyard lights came on. The Sentinel would have its ceremony. Denise would have her lesson. Priya and Deshawn would move on to the next project. But Walter stayed where he had always been most needed. Beside the person who no longer remembered the building. Beside the person who still remembered him.